Wait, can I redo my tip?
Yes.
Alright. I cannot speak. It's been way too long since I was in an English class. Okay.
Hey Carl students, specifically seniors, welcome back to Before You Go podcast with me. And today I have a very special guest with us, and his name is
Matt.
Alright, well, if you don't know, Matt is my older brother. We are 17 months apart. I am 19 and you are?
21.
Cool. So, Matt, can you tell the seniors a little bit of like what you're doing with life right now and your background kind of?
I've been to Carmel for about 6 years. Been going to Carmel. Went to school here in elementary. Moved out in like 5th grade, or after 5th grade, so middle school and high school. Went somewhere else. Graduated, or finished school this past spring. I'm in the police academy right now with CMPD.
Yes. So, Matt is not like the typical college student. He just finished CPCC and now he is off to the police academy. So, he is doing things a little differently than some of you, but that is okay. Today, the chapter we're going to be talking about is chapter 7, which is called Generosity Starts Small. So, living with Matt, we have been taught the same things by our wonderful parents, shout out to Mark and Kelly Gott, about how to be generous and what that looks like from a biblical perspective. In the book, it talks about generosity being a muscle that has to be developed. So generosity is something you don't just wake up and automatically like, I want to be generous today. It takes time and practice. All right, so Matt, how would you say mom and dad have taught us to be generous as kids?
Growing up, they always made us tithe. So we'd get a paycheck from wherever we worked, and we'd always have to put at least 10% in and kind of instilled habit and routine.
Cool. How did mom and dad teach us to leverage the other 90% of our money that we got?
They'd always make us put at least 25% in savings, like long-term savings, for like college or a car down the road. And that's about it. A lot. They encourage us to do more though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So our parents have taught us kind of simple yet super beneficial money habits. And I'd say for the most part, we've kind of stuck with that like the whole time that we've gotten a paycheck. Even now, it's like 10% tithe, 25% save, and then with the rest, we kind of figure out from there. Okay, so the next question. How do you control your money instead of letting your money control you?
Budget. It's important to set aside goals or limits to your spending each month. So set aside a number for each category, whether you're doing like car insurance, phone bill, spending money, you name it. Have like a limit that you don't want to go over, and you'll be good to go if you stay under.
Definitely. One thing about Matt, I would say he's not a spender or a saver. He's definitely a mix of both, which is a good quality to have. Something I do admire about him is he's always like, I have this money, might as well spend it, not save it like forever. But he also does save a good amount to where he can have enough in the future to support himself, to support family. Okay, so the next question for you, what does generosity look like outside of just giving 10% to the church?
Serving at the church. Big churches like Carmel, there's so many different outlets you can serve, whether it's like youth, worship, you name it. You can also serve other people by like helping do people's yard work, helping them move. There's a lot of different things you can do.
Yeah, awesome. Something Matt basically said is generosity is not just money, it's giving of your time as well. And as we all know, we are not the owners of our time. The Lord owns the 24 hours in our day, so it is important to use that well, because we are given that, and at any moment it could be taken away. We don't know. So we need to make the most of our time by being generous with it. As we are talking to seniors who are moving into college, most of them won't have a church home right when they get there. So what would your advice be as to where they can give their time, their money, and be generous before they have that specific church home?
You can always give to local organizations, like a shelter or something that you think does good. But I think a better idea would just be save it all, put it all in an account, take 10% out of each paycheck until you find that place you want to give it to.
That's smart. That way you can make the most of that money. Save it all.
Because you don't really tithe the shelter.
Yeah.
So no, save it. Put it in.
To eventually
put it all.
tithe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it all in the church, but create that separate bank account. Tithe only 10% after each paycheck, and dump it all in the church. I'm sure that church will welcome you with open arms if you give that much on your first real visit.
Okay, here we go. Living with Matt, I picked him to do the podcast on generosity because, of course, what you give is not really something you talk about all the time, but Matt is a very generous person. In fact, when I was looking to transfer schools and I needed like a little bit of extra money to be able to go to a different school, Matt calls me on the phone and was like, hey, I want you to be able to go to this school, so I will give you some money in my college fund if you need it. And he wasn't planning on going to college, so he had a little bit extra, but it was super, super kind of him and generous. And so I think that's a way that Matt has been generous outside of his tithe, which was a really cool encouragement for me as his sister. And then another thing, this isn't really generosity, but I think, like Matt, you just bought a car. So Matt, unlike a lot of people go to a car dealership and just have no idea how much money they want to spend on a car, and then they end up wasting it, going into a bunch of debt. Matt had a certain amount of money he wanted to spend, had a certain amount he wanted to spend on repairs, and has stuck to that. So I think that's really cool. Another thing, when you go to college, save for those kind of things, because you never know what you're gonna need, and you can't live off of ramen noodles the whole time.
I'm gonna give you guys 2 tips. First one, stay out of debt. Never finance a car, buy it with cash. Don't buy something that you don't have the money for. That sounds stupid, but it's true. A lot of people do that. Try to stay out of all debt. You don't want to be having a bunch of student loans, and honestly, don't go to college. Go to a 2-year community college, find a trade or find a job you can get right after that 2-year community college, unless you have the money to go 4 years without a large amount of student loans, because all debt is horrible. But let me say this, if you're going to buy a car, you've saved some money, don't finance it, buy it in cash. It's so much easier to do that than spend so much money down the road with like monthly payments and stuff. Thank you.
That's very wise advice. And you may be wondering, well, this was just a podcast about money, not generosity. But if you think about it,
true.
If you're in debt, how can you really be truly generous? So I think Matt's wisdom was super, super valuable. So take that to heart and listen to what he said, because there's so much blessing when you don't go into debt and when you can bless others. You will definitely be rewarded yourself. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your week.